It's just gone 7:30. Here's a quick look at your headlines. The Public Enterprises Department says the recent wage strike at South African Airways has resulted in a sudden ANC, DA and EFF will now battle it out for Joburg's top job. N.Magau has bid the city farewell after 3 years. Mpumalanga. She's just wrapped up her matric exams after starting school at the age of 20. And in your sport, Kaizer Chiefs look to continue their good form at the ABSA Premiership table. And of course, then we'll continue our conversation around Bertha Gxowa, that special lecture that is scheduled to take place tomorrow evening, I believe, at Wits University at the Origin Center there. This year, there will be Foundation founding trustees, Dr. G.Ramokgopa. Legislature. Before we went to break, Mamego, you had some thoughts to share, especially around the limited access for the ordinary man or for the ordinary woman on the street who doesn't necessarily have the numbers of somebody who's behind the office door who might be able to expedite things on their behalf.
Okay. What I need to indicate, Cathy, is that Bertha laid the foundation to open doors for ordinary women. In mind, I'm thinking about the Duduza development in Guatemala Springs, but in all corners of South Africa, there could have been a project which was started by Bertha. And how she did that, she called all women councillors, be it in the ANC and other political parties, and said, this is the way to go. So those projects are still there. But unfortunately, when Bertha passes on, little happened. And it is the Bertha Gxowa Foundation that is now saying all those projects must be turned into business. Because a project is a project. It has its own starting date and an ending date, but entrepreneurship goes a long way. So as the Bertha Gxowa Foundation, we are going back to those projects, we are reviving them. We have a decision, we've done our own research. We have a program that has been adopted by the trustees in their meeting, and that project is the one that will assist. But we're not saying this is enough. This must actually say we are there for you, emulating what Bertha envisaged to happen in our country. So that we link up, clearly we assist in opening those doors that are still closed for those ordinary women.
Unfortunately, again, a part of the experience, and I remember this specifically from the time that we saw protests and uprising amongst the country's women over gender-based violence, is that many who are talking about their experience in business is that corruption has in fact ensured that they too then experience discrimination on multiple layers. So you're first having to deal with the corrupt elements that are in the system, and then you're having to deal with the sexism and favors that are being asked in exchange for particular contracts or being able to get a some of the problems that are there, but that are systemic in nature. And I think that
the resilience that Dr. Namane has spoken about, the courage, the tenacity that also Mamego has spoken about, that the generation of Bertha Gxowa had, we also see it in our generation, especially the younger women as well. And that's what forced our government to look beyond just the good policies we have. Because since democracy institutions like the Gender Commission. We have come up with broad-based economic empowerment programs and all that as enablers, but it had not reached sufficient women to overcome those barriers. And we want to applaud also our President Cyril Ramaphosa, that he actually, with a greater sense of agency, called a joint sitting of Parliament to discuss the issue of gender-based violence and the underlying issues, and has also instructed the Finance Minister to find a budget to put a program together, because talk is one thing, doing is another. And that compact to liberate women. It's really unfortunate, especially during this entrepreneur celebrations globally, and also 16 days, that we still find brutal attacks of women, like this bright young lady from Limpopo as well, straight A, whatever. But those barriers, those challenges should make us even much more resolved. There are instruments, there is a resolve, and in the last investment conference, the President made sure that together with the other stakeholders, that issues of SMMEs and small businesses come to the fore. So there is hope. Let's work on it.
And certainly, you know, while those interventions that you're speaking about have generally been welcomed, especially by those from civil society who've been fighting for them for so long, there is still concern that they deal with the symptoms and they don't really address the root problem of how patriarchy has been entrenched in our society. And until we begin to change that, you know, we'll still be spending billions of rands on trying to come up with interventions, making sure that there are enough rape kits, but we're not actually reducing the rape rates in the country. And so I wonder that when you look at these challenges as women in
on the boards on which we sit, it becomes even much more important to understand what are the enabling policies that the companies have to make sure that not only women as individuals are brought on board, but also how enterprises, and particularly women-owned enterprises, can also, you know, be integrated in the value chain. Another important thing is with the recent policies from the presidency, there's that increased focus on ensuring increased participation with the private sector, with companies becomes important. Are companies creatively thinking about how to innovatively come up with vehicles, Cathy, of ensuring that enterprises can come in, thrive, and become more competitive?
Maybe you can talk about the barometer that you developed as part of our initiative.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, assess where are women in the corporate world, be they in corporate South Africa as chairs of boards or as CEOs or even as middle managers. And that we started in 2004. And why that was done was because we wanted to make sure when we engage men and also leaders that as academics and business people, that we have tangible facts to say, you tell us that you are promoting women, but this is the picture that emerges from the census that we've done. And we even went further, Cathy. We compared South Africa with Canada, USA, and Australia, and to say, how does South Africa corporate leaders? And over years, we found that because government was leading, it was during those times when for a long time You remember Dr. G.Ramokgopa. The main CEO was Maria Ramos, you know, because we looked at the top JSE listed companies and state-owned enterprises. But with the implementation of government policy, we saw greater representation. But as soon as the focus, you know, diminished, we saw women's participation only going down. We are now going through a cycle, Cathy, where women leadership, there's a cry out there that, for instance, women DGs or women leaders are actually decreasing and not increasing as anticipated. So those are the areas that we have to focus on. And the violence against women that we are seeing is also depressing. We sometimes say, Gwen used to say, you know, in Bertha Gxowa, what would Mama Bertha Gxowa have said? And each time we say this, we know we've got to
fact that you do hold an important political position. What are some of the answers then that you think politically can also be provided? Because it's not a question of policies. I think the policies on paper look great if they were implemented fully, but there seems to be a real challenge of implementation. So that being the case, how do you begin to resolve some of these issues?
First, let me indicate that Mam Bertha was a champion of anti-corruption. And you will recall that also she was the chair time within. And that's the reason, as the Bertha Gxowa Foundation, we also adopted a stance to say we also need to play an advocacy role over and above other things that we're doing. But also wherever we come from in our different areas, we need to champion. We can't just be talking about business people and not look at the whole picture, especially in issues that affect ordinary women, because that's who Mam Bertha was. And we're so proud of her, because in fact we wouldn't be associated with this foundation if it was not for Mam Bertha. At the time when she died, I was the mayor myself in Ekurhuleni, and I recall saying to the speaker, let's of the city of Ekurhuleni to Mam Bertha. It was based on the fact that Mam Bertha was just not an ordinary woman like myself, and want to ensure that those issues come on board. I am aware that there was another memorial lecture done by her organization today. Unfortunately, we could not, the two of us, we couldn't be there because of other responsibilities. But championing what Mam
corruption and to speak against corruption in perhaps the way that she would have, particularly from your organization, the ANC?
Well, because I'm representing Bertha Gxowa today, for Bertha Gxowa Foundation.
But you've been talking about Bertha Gxowa say. So
Yes, let me come back to that.
I'm interested to see, then, as this champion for integrity, how did she play along those lines? Because, of course, today we do have a lot of leaders that struggle with these kind of positions, especially on public platforms. So I'm just wondering.
Maybe as an individual in our own right as trustees, it's not difficult. That's why even those people that sit in the board, we choose them carefully. If I were to tell you who was the first chairperson of this board, you will be surprised. It's one woman that is a champion of anti-corruption herself, and even all of us. I don't think easy. Let me assure you, the Premier of Gauteng Province was once part of us. Mama Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is one of us.
The first chairperson.
As the first chairperson of. So even in our own individual rights, we choose each other carefully, because the people who sit in the board are people that must emulate who Mam Bertha was.
Can I say, yes, can I say on corruption, we must remember that corruption is a cancer.
Yes.
Grows the social moral fiber. You're not respected for who you are as a business person or as an official, but on how low you can go. And it steals from all of us it impoverishes our country even more. And that is why we should actually have zero tolerance. It's a very regrettable what we had to go through over the past 10 years. I think the spirits of Bertha Gxowa, Albertina Sisulu, and those women are not resting and will not rest until we have really taken out scooped out the corruption with its sack, like we do when we take out an abscess. If you just squeeze it out, it will grow and grow. So we must make sure that we excise it out. So that is one thing that we must be very clear about, not only in our country, anywhere in the world. So the rebuilding of the social moral fiber is very critical to our sustainable development. Our first chairperson, insisted all the time that the Bertha Gxowa Foundation needs to emulate the best of Bertha Gxowa. And as I indicated at the beginning, it's ethical leadership.
Yes.
Even where you are going to be marginalized, if you tell the truth as it is.
Right. And she also told us as...
very briefly,
she told us as professionals that know that you represent the downtrodden of this country and serve with dignity and integrity. And this is a message that we have to spread. And people who are corrupt, unfortunately, also deplete the limited resources that need to go to the poor. So if you really are pro-poor, you will not really have any reason.
okay.
To undermine.
Final word from you, very briefly.
I think most of the issues have been covered, but I want to indicate that as the Bertha Gxowa Foundation, we took a stance to say we can't have the Bertha created in honor of other women like Mama Sisulu or Adelaide Tambo, Charlotte Maxeke, and so forth. So we have a resolution that says we should work because they used to work together and they represented where our country should go. So I think we're proud of all our women in South Africa.
All right. Well, Bomme, let us wish you the best then for the lecture which you'll be holding tomorrow. And we'll be watching the work that you'll be doing over the years with keen interest. So all of the best, Dr. G.Ramokgopa, Dr. N.Magau, and Ntombi Mego. That's all. We'll wrap it up for this hour. Mark Lewis.